to be fair, it was 1-0 going on about 8, and it was a marvellous performance from Peter McCloy in Turin, and everybody just said, oh, Rangers are really, really lucky. Then we came to Ibrox and beat them 2-0, and I was fortunate to get the winning goal that night. I was on a committee in UEFA with Dino Zoff, and I was we chatted to him one night and reminded him of that game, and he remembered it, and I had to apologise and say, well, I'm also the guy who got the winning goal, and he laughed, you know. But it was a header I scored with that day, and we won 2-0, and that was fantastic. Then went to Eindhoven after drawing 0-0 at home, and I really did feel that we should have won at home, but we didn't, and they had a great record at home. Eindhoven, never been beaten, and they had a lot of the Dutch international players, and we went over there, and I always remember Greggy's tactics. The main thing we spoke about was keeping it tight for 20 minutes, and if we keep it tight for 20 minutes we've got a real chance. And I always remember, I think I looked up at the scoreboard that was there when Eindhoven scored. I think it was 28 seconds on the clock, so 28 seconds was not quite the 20 minutes we tried to hold the game for. So it was then plan B, and we're all walking back to the kick-off, and we're all looking at each other in a chat, and we're saying, what we do here? And we just, one of the boys, I think it was Alan McDonald, just said, let's just go and play, let's just play our normal game now, forget this European stuff. And we went out and played. Now 2 each was putting us through, and then we get a marvellous goal. One of the things that always amazes me about it was, and I was always annoyed about it, that Archie McPherson was doing the commentary, and he never mentions the fact it's me that hits the crossfield ball. I hit a 60-yard pass from one side of the pitch to the other to Tommy McLean that opened up Eindhoven, and McLean got the ball. And Archie McPherson just said in the commentary, oh, there's a long ball to McLean. Never mentions it's me. And all over the years, people have always just said it was Tommy McLean and Bobby Russell that got that goal. I was involved in it, and so I'm glad to put the record straight here and say I'm pleased to take my credit for being involved in the goal. But it was a fantastic goal. 2 each was putting us through anyway, but Bobby Russell did brilliantly that night in scoring it.
And before we go into the Cologne game, I want to mention that night in Eindhoven, the Rangers support was fantastic. It was an awesome crowd. Amazing.
It was amazing support. The Rangers, I mean, we were well supported in European games, no doubt about it. Even in Turin we had a big support, but that night in Eindhoven was fantastic, and I think they loved it as well. I mean, they really, the people. We got back to the airport, the fans were there, and they were loving it, and they were singing away and going crazy because it was a major result. Quarter-finals, that was us in, and having played two of the best teams in Europe and beating them, beating both teams was amazing, and it was a great game to play in, but it was a great result, there's no question in that. Then we went up to the quarterfinals, and as I say, it was the same year as I'm talking about, Greggy's first year in charge, terrible weather conditions, a lot of games cancelled. We started to pile up the fixtures, and we played Cologne, and we didn't play as well as we could play. I was so disappointed because that Cologne were the best team left in it, in my opinion. Nottingham Forest went on to win it, but we would have beaten them, and I know that's easy to say, but I do feel that if we had knocked out Cologne, we would have won the European Cup that year, and that was a sickener because we lost. We lost 1-0 in Cologne, and we drew at home, and we should have knocked them out.
So it was disappointing end, but it was a
great run, but it was disappointing end. Yeah, because to go out to Cologne was just because they weren't as good a team. They were nowhere near as good as Eindhoven or Juventus. That was the thing. They were decent, but they were nowhere near as good as the two teams we knocked out. We made the cup happen, the cup good for everybody else, because we knocked out the two of the favourites, and then when we went out, it was so disappointing. And it was down to, as I say, with injuries and suspensions and a pile up of fixtures, and I've no doubt that was the reason we didn't beat them. So
another great game that you played in was Rangers 6, Aberdeen 1 in the League Cup, and I believe you scored a few goals that day as well.
Yeah, it was my only hat trick. It was Rangers had lost 3-1 at Aberdeen already that season, just a couple of months before. So this was us joining them in a League Cup, and it was a two-legged affair. First game was at Ibrox, and it was totally unexpected. Everybody was giving Aberdeen. I remember reading the papers and saying Aberdeen should win this because they beat Rangers comfortably in the first game of the season. And it's one of those ones that Jock Wallace actually said it was the best Rangers performance in his time as a manager. He actually pinpointed that game, won 6-1, and I was fortunate to get a hat trick that night. The only hat trick I scored for Rangers. It was a fantastic win for us. And then we went up to Aberdeen for the return game, and I scored early on there, and then we got beaten, I think 3 or 4-1. I can't remember what it was, but we didn't play too well. But we had the 7-1 aggregate at one stage to made it quite comfortable. I think that's why we probably didn't keep the thing going, but we went through. But it was a brilliant performance that night, and a great result to beat Aberdeen, especially that Aberdeen team who ultimately ended up challenging us right to the last day in the league that season, and also we beat them in the cup final. So it was a strong Aberdeen team.
So that's some of your Rangers career as a player, and later on in life you became a football agent and then the SFA chief executive. I'm just wondering, in the current affairs, the way that the Scottish game's gone, a lot of people would be interested. How do you feel the Boozegate scenario was dealt with? And
I think it was just the fact it was under the regulations in those days. When that happened, it was the SFA that dealt with it, which meant at board level. So it turned out to be a board decision to do what happened with it, and I wanted to make changes in that respect, and I did. I proposed that in future the manager should have responsibility for the conduct of players and the disciplinary matters, and that got changed. So after that incident happened, it was the manager in future that would deal with anything that happened. The second point of it was that that once it had happened, a lot of people said, well, you know, these players are banned for life and all that sort of thing. And I came out and said, no, they're not banned for life. And I was criticised for that. You know, personally, it was all a personal attack on me. Another aspect was the reason I said that was because a life ban's illegal. I didn't come out and say that, but I was making it clear that these bans were not for life. So when it happened, and then when the new manager was getting appointed, before he appointed new manager, I also changed the regulations in respect that the new manager could come in and change those scenarios from the bans that were there. So the bans were an indefinite period really, and the new manager could come in and actually alter that, which he did do. He tried to bring back Barry Ferguson, who wouldn't come. He got Alan McGregor, he's back playing. Yeah. So I changed that, but the initial decision was not down to me, it was a board decision. But the other aspect of that is, it just shows you how these things are. So many people couldn't quite understand. They said there was other players involved in the Boozegate. How come it was just Ferguson and McGregor? The reason, Ferguson and McGregor, that was a yellow card that night in football parlance. The next, at the game, they were making gestures at the touchline. That was a second yellow card. They were not banned for Boozegate. That was one of the incidents that happened that caused it. The other incident was their behaviour on the touchline, in the dugout. There was two incidents. But ended to think that the Boozegate thing that happened at Cameron House was the reason they were banned from playing for Scotland. Weren't really listening, weren't really taking it in. And as usual, as I found when I was in the job, people are ignorant of what's really happening, but they have an agenda in order to make something your fault or blame you for something they don't quite understand. I tried to explain it, and that's why I put it in football parlance at the time. Yeah. It was 2 yellow cards. And you don't give everybody who's, if you get to the second half of a game and 2 players get a second yellow card, you don't send off everybody else who's got a yellow card from the first half.
So that was possibly the biggest talking point of your career as SFA chief executive? Yeah,
there was a few things that came up. I found there was, like, you know, a lot of things. There was a lot of people not happy about me getting the job. I don't think there's any doubt about it, and I did say this when I left the job. I think the Rangers background can tend to be people who are not Rangers fans tend to be anti-Rangers, and me being an ex-Rangers player, I get a lot of animosity because of that, and I know that, and I see it, you know, from supporters, not all, but supporters, media, that people turn on you because of my background.
A lot of people wanted you to fail.
Yes.
Did you feel when you were in that position that there's certain people in the media world who you trusted and were friends who could have been more helpful to you?
I think so. I don't think there's any doubt about it. That, you know, a few people had made me a target. There's no question of that. They had an agenda and looking at try to find things. I mean, there was some things were just so trivial, but they made a big issue out of it. And you know, one was the fact that, you know, at one stage they said, oh, I hadn't contacted Mark McGee to tell me he didn't have the job. And I said, well, I was dealing with his agent. I was talking with his agent all the time and told his agent everything that was going on, not Mark personally. I ended up writing him a letter, Mark McGee, but Mark McGee even phoned me and just said, look, I know people are just they've been phoning me, trying to get me to say something about you and all that. So there was an agenda there was no doubt about it, that, you know, some people just, you know, whether out of jealousy or whatever, not happy about being in the job. I didn't even apply for the job, I was approached. And I must be honest with you, looking back at it now, it was very frustrating. I actually thought I would have more powers. And the Henry McLeish report that came out while I was there, we put Henry McLeish in to do this report. It's actually been saying that the chief executive does not have the powers he should have. And the guy who was in charge down in England at the same time as I was there, actually he left his job as well. He used to talk to me about this and say, "Is this what it's like in Scotland?" I would say, "Yes." And he said, and when he left his job, he said, "I was neither chief nor was I executive." Yeah. And that was his comment. And I have to say, that's one of the reasons I was frustrated, and I walked away. I tried to change things. I've got my ideas on how the game should be played, certainly in terms of development of players, how the game should be all through the different levels. We should be across the board looking to try and help the sport right throughout, but the professional game is the main part of it. We've got to make sure we've got a strong professional game. But if you can't make the changes and you can't do these things, and you're relying on having to go to a board or votes to a committee, it's frustrating. And I actually stayed in the job.
When you go back to the Louise, were you happy to go back into that position?
Yeah, I was approached by people quite quickly to see if I was available to go back into it, and I had no problem about that because I was always comfortable doing it. I never asked to get into it, but when I went into it, I felt, yeah, I want to get in and try and give, I think an objective viewpoint. I mean, I've never had a Rangers head on when I've been talking about the game and talking about sport, but I do feel that sometimes when I see a kind of negativity towards Rangers that is totally unfair or whatever, then I've been quite willing to speak up, and I've done it in the past. I mean, I did see at one stage when we were talking about the whole aspect of it, and there was a lot of complaints about me in the BBC with people phoning in when I actually used to mention when we were talking about sectarian singing or whatever, and I would say talk about Celtic as well, and they said nothing to do with Celtic, it's only Rangers and all this, and I'm thinking no, it's across the board. Yeah. There's no doubt about it that for anybody to try and shelve away from the fact that saying, oh, we're not involved in this, is a load of nonsense. So I made it very clear that I felt it was unfair just to be totally basing it all on it's Rangers that are the problem, because and that's nothing to do with the fact that I'm an ex-Rangers player. I must say that right now. I'm not defending the club for that reason. I'm defending the club because I'm seeing it from an objective point of view, from a neutral point of view, and just trying to look at it and say that we've got to act in a fair and honest manner when we're talking about these issues, not getting carried away with maybe any background you've got. As I say, and it's easier for me to an certain extent because I was brought up in a Kilmarnock fans household there was no religious bias and like that in my family at all. So I'm a lot easy to say, but you know what? You get sometimes just because of the fact I've been at Rangers, a lot of people won't see that, won't accept that. So that's the problem I've got. I'm back in the media now. As you said before, I realised what it was like when I went into the SFA job. I saw who were the ones who were automatically, were against me, and I'm having to work with some people maybe here in that position now. I'm quite comfortable with that. I can go and do my job. I'm quite happy with how I look at things, and as I say, I don't have any agenda. It was a big thing. In fact, I remember even when I was in the job at the SFA, they were saying I would never have Craig Levein as manager because he had released my son from Dundee United, and people were quite clearly saying I had an agenda against him. So he gets the job, and I'm involved in that. And does that show that regardless of what he did to my son, that I'm above that? And I think it does, because I had no agenda against him, but other people said I did, because it's that typical thing of people create a situation rather than wait to see what the truth is. Now, if he hadn't got the job, people would have said he didn't get the job because of me. That's what they would have said.
Of course, yeah.
But as it was, we appointed Craig Levein. He's the Scotland manager now, because I'm not that type of person. I do not have any grudges against people. So I'm working with people now who were critical of me when I got to the SFA.